But it's a nomination, one name from the presiding bishop, and then we either vote them up or vote them down. All right, down here.
I'm confused on two areas.
You're confused on two areas.
One, you said that the Episcopal Church is part of the Anglican community.
We're part of the Anglican communion, the Episcopal Church is.
So is the Southern Cone.
The Southern Cone is part of the Anglican communion.
One, how do those differ?
How do they differ?
And then two, at the, I guess where former Bishop Iker was, I guess, in charge of the Episcopal Diocese of Fort Worth, at that convention, we had delegates there along with everybody else. And if, I guess there was a majority vote.
Right, majority vote at the convention.
They all decided to leave.
They decided to leave.
The Episcopal Church.
Right.
Does that mean that we have to break away from that convention, that convention, I guess that Episcopal diocese before we can form?
Does that mean that we have to break away from that diocese to form our own diocese? Good questions. All right, the first one is, the Episcopal Church is part of the Anglican Communion. We're a constituent member of the Anglican Communion. There are 38-ish provinces that are part of that communion. One of which is the Church of England, another is the Church of Scotland, another is Church of Ireland, another is the Church of Canada, another one's Church of West Indies, Church of India. There's all these provinces around the world, and they all are autonomous or provinces in communion with the Archbishop of Canterbury. One of those provinces is one called the province of the Southern Cone. Okay, so the Episcopal Church and the province of the Southern Cone are both members of the Anglican Communion in communion with the Archbishop of Canterbury. But Jack Iker is not a bishop in the province called the Episcopal Church because he's left it. And the Constitution and canons of the Church of Canada have no authority over me as an Episcopal priest. Okay? So he's left, and the Constitution and canons of the Episcopal Church, if he's a member of another province, have no authority over him. Okay? And the other question was, if that group voted to leave the Episcopal Church, do we as a parish then need to vote to leave them and to make an appeal to the Episcopal Church to take us back? Okay. The fact is that the vote to leave is going to be found null and void, as if it never happened, and illegal. And we aren't participating in an action that's null and void and will be determined to be illegal. We have not left anything. We're an Episcopal parish, and we are part of the Episcopal Diocese of Fort Worth. Still, we don't have to leave something to get back in it. They have left the Episcopal Church. We didn't leave the Episcopal Church. So we don't have to get out of that to form a new diocese. There's no new diocese called the Episcopal Church of Fort Worth being formed. It's a diocese that's devoid of leadership. What we're doing February 7th is not creating a new diocese. Okay? You understand that? We are repopulating the leadership of a diocese that's been decimated by mass exodus. We don't have to vote to get out of. It's ludicrous that we would just be a little island and turn to the Episcopal Church and say, take us back. We are the Episcopal Church. All right.
Is there a sense within the diocese of the percentage of, rank and file congregants who willfully
Is there a sense of like a percentage of that rank and file? There is no sense. The claim is 80%. The fact is that 80% of the laity at the diocesan convention voted to leave the Episcopal Church. But that doesn't mean 80% of the rank and file Episcopalians would have voted the same way. Okay? May or may not have been. I don't think so. It doesn't really matter if 80% vote to do something. If it's what? If it's wrong, illegal, whatever. I mean, crowds frequently do things that aren't right. Yes. Miriam, I know you've got a question, Miriam. Don't.
Father Chamber, it was answered by that.
Okay.
What you just answered.
Okay, thank you.
And that we were in that diocese that voted to go.
We were
We
in,
were on the 14th of November, 2008.
and they became something else
And why did we have to go with it?
because what they did was null and void, as if it never happened, and it's going to be determined as illegal. We are constitutionally members of the Episcopal Church. They left the Episcopal Church. They became something else. They all decided they were going to become something else.
Something else?
I'm sorry?
Hasn't the Episcopal Church become something else than what it used to be?
The Episcopal Church certainly is different now than it was when I was a kid in the 50s, okay? There are ways, as I said last week, for us to do things within the bounds of our polity, and just removing wholesale a whole diocese is not part of that. Right down here. Alicia.
Okay, you were talking about the diocese not being in control and having leadership. And that at some point it was going to be rendered null and void, that their exodus was null and void. So what happens to is the physical buildings of the diocese offices held by the Episcopal Church, like the churches, parishes are?
Right.
And when does it have to go through legal sources to evacuate those offices so that the new leadership
Can occupy them.
can occupy them?
Did you hear that back there, Robert? You could hear it, okay. Well, there's a difference of opinion, obviously, between the world of Jack Eicher's creation and the Episcopal Church. And he would say that the assets of the Episcopal Diocese of Fort Worth, which he used to be the bishop of, are still his assets. Because he's still sitting in the building at 2900 Alameda, okay? And he's still writing checks on money that used to be in the Episcopal Church, and frankly still is. The Episcopal Church opinion about canon law about property is expressed in what's called the Dennis Canon. That's the name of the canon because I think it was a Bishop Dennis that first proposed it. And the gist of the Dennis Canon is that that all the real property is held in trust for the Episcopal Church. All right? That this property and the diocesan center property is part of an Episcopal institution, the Episcopal Church. And that we get locally to vote to add to it or to sell it, you know, kind of. But if we leave the Episcopal Church, we have to leave the property because it's held in trust for the Episcopal Church. Now, if you want to leave the Episcopal Church, I'm sure this has happened many times where a congregation wants to leave and then they negotiate with a diocese or a bishop and say, we want to leave, and the bishop says, okay, and let's see what we can do. And they all agree that we'll write you a check for whatever, you know, and the bishop's fine with that. Just like if we decided to sell this property to a realtor or a developer. You know, it's just a transaction. That's the legal proper way to do it, okay? And I'm sure it's happened many, many, many times. But you can't just say, we're going to become the Baptist church here, and we're going to stay here. Because this property is held in trust by us for someone else, for an institution.